Good morning. I am here with the attorneys at Frame and Frame today. And we're going to give you a deep dive on estate planning. There's lots of common mistakes that folks make with estate planning. There are lots of myths. So we're going to kind of debunk things today with the ladies from Frame and Frame Attorneys at Law. You guys have been in the community for over 65 years, so I think you've got a pretty good breadth of experience under your belt. And we're going to kick things off to start with just the simple question: who needs estate planning and why? Who wants to kick that off for us? Tara?
Sure. So, basically everyone needs estate planning. People think that if they're not wealthy or that they don't have kids, that they don't need estate planning. But really, anybody that has minor children needs estate planning. Anybody who's accumulating wealth, anybody who owns assets or any types of properties, and older people who are maybe, their age, they're getting older and they're looking at potentially some long-term care expenses in their future. So these are all instances where people need estate planning, not to mention special needs children and children who maybe are not so financially savvy or responsible with money, to make sure that you're taking care of those children and providing for them long term, and to protect the family assets, the family property, and the money, so that it can actually take care of your family when you're gone.
And I think that one of the biggest misconceptions with estate planning is that it costs a lot of money. Veronica, you want to address that?
It is a misconception. And I think a lot of people think they have to have a lot of money to make it worthwhile to do an estate plan, and neither of which is true. As far as the cost, there's a variety of tools that are used in estate planning, and they go from, small amounts that you would probably spend in a weekend going out to dinner to amounts that, maybe a weekend getaway. It's not the most expensive thing. It's not a big dip into your long-term savings in order to afford to get a plan. So it's really not this big expensive thing. You don't need to have a huge amount of assets to make it worthwhile to do. Everyone needs it, really. I mean, single people, everyone, like Tara was saying.
I think that's a really important factor, because I know, when I was younger, I pretty much thought I had a will. I don't even know where I got it, but I had a will. I had my godparents selected. Isn't a will enough for most people? Or, kind of what's kind of the criteria? Erica, you want to kind of address that one?
Sure. So you said my favorite thing, which is I have godparents, so I have guardians for my children. Everyone says that, and that's not the case. A godparent is a religious designation. It is not a legal term for use for protection of your children. These are your children. You would protect them with your lives. You would take a bullet for them. Why wouldn't you designate a guardian for them legally if something were to happen to you, your spouse, your significant other? So you really need to think about that, because if you were to pass away, then somebody would have to petition the court to take care of your children. And it could be anybody. It could be the brother you don't like. It could be your mother-in-law that you don't like. Those people are not the person that you would choose. You may choose someone that you have a special relationship, or your child has a special relationship with, and they're not blood relatives. So by you designating that, you're telling the court, I am the parent. This was my last wish. Please abide by it. So it's super important.
And to stay on that topic of younger families, I think it's more than just a matter of designating, okay, this person's going to take care of my children. I think that there's also a lot of considerations regarding how are they going to take care of your children?
Absolutely.
What kinds of funds are going to be made available? Is the proceed from your house going to go straight to your sister, or is it going to go somewhere else? Tara, you want to address kind of some of those issues specifically for younger families with children?
Yeah, so I mean, it's an important topic, and whenever we have families with younger children, these are always, these are topics that we cover in detail and in depth, and we like to go over different scenarios with families and with couples. Say, well, what about in this situation? How do you envision, your children, your family being taken care of? What about in this situation? And a lot of times, people just aren't trained to think that way like we are. So, they're like, wow, I haven't really thought that far ahead. And that's when we say, well, that's what we're here for. We're looking at all these different scenarios, these situations, and making sure that we're, covering all the contingencies. So it's really important to think about those situations.
And it's a question that I hear among friends and family all the time. So while we're on the topic, Veronica, do you want to address an online will or a one-pager, and how, is that really good enough, or why is it really not good enough?
It's not. I mean, there's so many factors to consider when you're doing your estate planning and coming up with the different things that you need to consider in terms of, like we've been talking about, who's going to be taking care of your children, and who's going to be managing your estate, who's going to be handling the money, what's going to be going on with all of those things that have to happen should you pass. And an online will is not going to give you those scenarios like Tara was just mentioning, in terms of, we're going to bring up these what if scenarios. We're going to ask these questions and do these deep dive questions when we're interviewing our clients to find out what are the special circumstances that they're facing. The online wills are just kind of plug in, and they're not specific to your specific needs. And everyone's picture is different. Everyone's circumstances are different. And we're going to be the ones asking the questions that people generally don't think of until they're talking to us and they're being prompted by it. So they're not going to think of it, and they're not going to be able to personalize it. It's just not going to cover and protect them the way that a professionally prepared will. Not to say duplicative, but
right. And honestly,
I would say also, like, certain situations where people think that they're doing a favor for their family. A grandparent is leaving a child, let's say $100,000, but that child is a special needs child that's reliant on government benefits. By just doing that simple will and leaving it to their children, and then if their children pass to the grandchildren, that can be very catastrophic to someone who's receiving benefits. And by not incorporating different provisions that we include in wills, most of the time, they're not protecting those children, and they're actually harming those children in the long run. So they don't know what they don't know. So that's the problem with those online wills.
Yeah, and I think when I was younger, just a couple of other thoughts to point out. If I had an online will, which I did, I don't know if it was online, but it was a one-pager. If that had been challenged, then what?
Oh, I can answer that.
Yeah, Erica, answer that.
I can definitely answer that. So I have a case with that exact fact pattern, is that there is nothing to determine, did this person actually create this will? I mean, we have several fail-safes that we do in our office when we have somebody do a will signing ceremony. So we have initialing, we go through each page. We have certain things that we do so that we know it's an original document. An online document, a one-pager, I mean, does it have the two signatures? Does it have an attestation clause, which says that you have two witnesses in the same room with you that see you signing this document, that you are competent, that you understand what you are signing, and that you're doing it freely, voluntarily, and not under duress?
Yeah.
So that's one of the requirements in Maryland. And I have a case where there is 4 or 5 pages. There's no initialing. There's no handwriting. It's typewritten, all 4 pages. So I could go online and I could change it exactly what I need it to be and print it out. So it's very easy to counterfeit these things. It's unfortunate, and it's costing money for these families and from the estate to deal with this.
Yeah.
So it's not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Veronica brings up a good point. For about the cost of a weekend getaway, you can have a lot more protection for both you and your family. So most people do not understand the difference between a will and a trust. And quite honestly, I think probably the biggest myth out there is that a trust is just for wealthy people and a will is good enough for the rest of us. So should you have a will or a trust? Tara, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so it really depends on the situation and the goals and objectives of the family. So, certain instances where you have grown children, they're all, well established, they're stable, they're financially savvy and responsible for the most part. You may only need a will plan, which would be your will, your financial power of attorney, your medical power of attorney, and your advance directive. In a situation where, let's say you have children that are either special needs children, or you have children that maybe have a history of drug abuse or substance abuse, or you have minor children and you really don't want them to get a large sum of money when they're 18 or 21, then you might want to think about a trust plan. So a trust plan is private. It does not get filed with the court. It avoids probate. And there's a lot of creative provisions that we can include, basically directing. It's an instruction manual for the trustee as to how the money is to be used, when it's distributed, to whom it's distributed, at what ages it's distributed. And you don't really get all that with a basic will. So it just depends on the needs of the family and what their concerns are. So that's how we make a determination. We'll go over all the options with the client, and then it's really up to them, which plan they feel is best for their family.
Yeah, and you touched on something that I think is important just to highlight, is that Maryland is not known for being tax friendly in a lot of ways. And a trust can help you avoid that probate process. For those that don't understand those implications, Veronica, you want to just touch on, how a trust can actually help protect the family from the probate process?
Well, because the trust is a private document and everything is set up ahead of time, so that way it's really a vehicle that makes it much more streamlined when somebody passes. Whereas with probate, you have to go through the register of wills, you have to have the will registered, you have to file an inventory list with everything that the person owns, a list of all the assets, and it becomes something public that anyone can look up when someone has passed, what the will is and what your beneficiaries are getting as a result of that. And as a result of the trust, you can really make it much more private. You can be much more, and I think I went off a little bit on the question.
That's okay. Yeah, I think just to bring it home, the fact that with a trust, you can avoid sometimes that lengthy probate process and potentially, do some tax strategies that help the family avoid some significant implications there.
So,
right.
yes, Suzanne.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tara.
With the tax issues, right. Currently the tax exemptions are very high, but they are going to come down within the next several years. So we also have to be looking at that, and we can build in some, build in provisions that avoids or limits those estate taxes or inheritance taxes for the family. So it's really important to be aware of the family's financial situation, and if they are going to be affected by those lowering exemptions in the next several years, and then we have to plan for that ahead of time.
Yeah, and Tara, just I know you do a lot of work in the community. You have a lot of strategic business partners. Just touch on the fact that or just clarify for us, you work with other financial advisors, accountants. You interact with the other advisors that folks have, correct?
Yeah, so we really like to work as a team. We like to collaborate with other professionals. So if a financial advisor refers a client to me, we're going to work closely with them to make sure we're all on the same page. And a lot of times I do have clients come in and either they don't have a financial advisor, and maybe, I notice in their form that they have a couple $100,000 sitting in a cash account. And I'm like, okay, why is this money just sitting there not working for you? We need to get you with someone who can help you, make money on that money and look forward to your retirement. And also, we work with CPAs. So we like to collaborate and make sure that, that CPA, the financial advisor, and the estate attorney, that we're all on the same page. We're all working for the benefit of the client, and we're all going in the same direction. And, sometimes the financial advisor, the CPA, has known the clients for 20 years. So they have maybe more information that they can input that the clients don't necessarily think is important. But then when, we learn it is important. So it's great to work as a team and have that, collaboration.
Yeah, I think that's a really important factor that I've, in working with you guys, I have noticed that you're very collaborative with the other folks that are involved in the family's financials, legal, whatever. So I think that's important to point out. Now,
let me can I just add also, there are certainly situations clients also call us and, we realize there's really nothing for us to do at this point, maybe in the future, but we will make sure that they get to the people they need right now. So, especially elderly people with aging parents call. And if it's not something we can help them with, we make sure they get in touch with maybe, a real estate agent to sell the house, or someone to help clean the house out and declutter. And a lot of times someone to help them with nursing home or assisted living placement, because the family just doesn't even know where to go and what facilities would be appropriate for their parent. So we have those resources that we get them in touch with those people so that they can help them.
Yeah. So for those that are somewhat naive or new to this process, the powers of attorney and the healthcare directives are really important. Erica, you want to talk to us for just a minute about the power of attorney? I mean, is that enough? What's your thoughts on that?
So I'm going to give the lawyer answer. It depends. It depends on what's in your power of attorney. So for financial purposes, there is a statutory Maryland form, and they did a great job. And that's usually what everyone needs. But you need to make sure, again, we talk about this tailoring the plan to you. We do a more durable, comprehensive plan that allows for gifting, for asset protection. It allows for, creature comforts, to allow you to get a companion pet. It allows you to get services. It allows you to do things that are more holistic in nature, as opposed to just getting your clothes, your food, and your cars. Now, the other type of power of attorney is a healthcare power of attorney. So what I just talked about is the financial. That ends with you when you die. Whoever you appoint can do nothing with your assets after you pass. The healthcare power of attorney lasts a little bit longer. It is there to make your medical decisions, and it's also to help with any organ donations, to help with disposal of your body if you're not going to do something traditional. It's really, really important. It is like the supercharged document. This document can move you from one facility to another if you're not getting the care you need. And then it can also make the end of life decisions for your family so that they don't have to make that tough decision. You're telling them what you want to have happen. So yes and no, they are enough if they're done properly. Don't get them online, come into an attorney, make sure everything is in sync with all your entire plan, because every document feeds off the other.
Yeah. What about, Tara, maybe I'll direct this to you. I'm included in this category, but what are the 3 biggest mistakes that most people make when it comes to estate planning?
I think number one, I think not updating their plan. I have people, either they've been divorced for 20 years and their ex-spouse is still named as their power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney. I know most people don't want their ex-spouse in charge of their finances if they're incapacitated or making healthcare decisions for them, and let alone receiving something under their estate plan. So not updating it, and especially if if you get married, if you get divorced, new children, grandchildren, you have a death in the family, and that person is named in your documents, you need to look at your documents, your estate planning documents, probably, I would say, at least every 3 to 5 years, to make sure that no revisions need to be made. The second, I would say, is failing to take into consideration minors or adult children. I think people don't think through those scenarios as to what happens if I go tomorrow or next week and my child is 10 years old. Do I want my 10-year-old getting all of this money when they're 18 or 21? And then, most of the time, no, because they're just not ready to take on that financial responsibility. And then, young adult children, they're just not ready to handle that responsibility. So being able to provide for them long-term is really important. And that's something people don't think about. And then asset protection. People don't really know what that means, but you can provide for asset protection in your estate plan for your beneficiaries and your heirs. So that means, I had a situation where a client basically took his inheritance and ended up commingling it, which means mixing it up with his marital funds, so that when he got divorced, his wife was able to take half of all of his inheritance, and he didn't understand why. If he had a properly prepared estate plan, we can avoid that and make sure to protect that money for your beneficiaries against any future divorce, bankruptcy, creditors, or judgments, so that money is there for their benefit in the future, and it doesn't go towards something else because of one of their, a mistake they made or just some unfortunate event in their lifetime. So that's, those are three important mistakes that people don't consider when they're creating their plan.
And I think that the other mistake is that people make the plan, and like you alluded to, they do not update it when there's life changes. New babies, new grandchildren, new marriages, divorces, what have you. So I think those are really important too. That kind of segues us into one topic, and that's blended families. In today's society, it's very common for folks to have a pre-existing relationship or perhaps children from another relationship. Erica, can you talk to us just a moment about what blended families in particular need to know?
Sure, absolutely. So when you have a blended family and say, multiple marriages, older children, younger children, so you have children from a prior marriage and then children together, you need to have that conversation with your spouse and decide what's going to happen, because in Maryland, you're required to have your own will. So if you want to leave your money to your children from your prior marriage and your current children, but you don't want to leave it to your spouse's children, then there may be some disconnect between you and your spouse. There are some really cool vehicles that we can do through trust planning to make sure that both families are serviced and get the money that they're entitled to without cutting somebody out. So for instance, if dad has it going to everybody, he passes away, mom can then change the will after she gets her money and cut out his kids completely, which wasn't dad's intent. So that's something that, families need to consider. If you're not married, that's the other one. You're not entitled to anything. So you really should consider getting estate planning, designating your significant other as a beneficiary on your plans, everything else. And we really do look at everything, because that's where Tara didn't mention this, but in the mistakes they made, they don't look at the whole picture. Mm-hmm. Do your bank accounts match what your estate plan is? Do your IRAs, do your retirement accounts, do your life insurance, stock accounts, does it match? So that's what blended families need to know. Everything has to line up and match so that you give your money to who you want it to go to.
Yeah, and that leads us into one other topic. Veronica, maybe you want to touch on this, and that is single folks, LGBTQ. They do not have all of the benefits of perhaps a married couple or a family. If you're a single mom, you certainly probably want to ensure that your children are protected for and cared for. What do single people need to know about estate planning?
So, well, there's a couple different scenarios. The single parent who needs to make sure that they have put in the protections for their children, like I know Erica mentioned earlier on in the conversation today. It's really important that you've designated who's going to be the provider for your children if you're single and you don't have someone, a spouse that's going to automatically step in, or if you're in an LGBTQ relationship where there may be a biological child from a prior relationship, and what's going to happen when you pass and your partner now wants to still have a continued relationship with that child. If you don't prepare and put something in place in your estate planning documents to provide that there is still ongoing relationship with that child, then your partner can lose out on a relationship that they've developed and built with that child. And then single people in general, if they don't even have children, it's just important, because if you don't have a will and you don't have anything in place and you're single, what happens to everything when you pass? All of your assets are there. Who's going to be the one that's going to be taking care of it? Now the state of Maryland has to decide what's going to happen and who's going to be the one to benefit from it and who's going to be the one to handle it. And you don't want the government doing that, because you may have definite people you do want involved and definite people you don't want involved. And so if you don't make those provisions, then you have no say in it whatsoever. So for all of those circumstances, it's just really important that you put it in paper, so that way it's going to be followed. Your wishes are going to be followed.
Okay. Well, it's a really good discussion, and I think you ladies, you obviously know your stuff, but I think it drives home the point that the attorneys at Frame and Frame can certainly guide you. You guys have been doing this for 65 years, which is a heck of a long time.
We don't look that old because my dad started the firm in 1954. So he had it for the first, 30, 40 years. And then, but it was founded in 1965, and we are ingrained in the community and have definite relationships with the communities in Maryland. So we're very proud of being able to be a resource for them for 65 years.
Yeah, it's an incredible history that you've got here in the community. So as we wrap up today, Tara, there's a couple of things that we just want to let the audience know about. First of all, you have a guide, a comprehensive guide. You want to just talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, we have several guides on our website that cover different topics. So we have long-term care planning checklists. We have long-term care planning guide. We have planning for millennials. We have essentials of estate planning. A probate guide. So there's lots of information and lots of resources for people to check out and read about. So they can go to the website and download those free guides. And if there's something that's not covered in there or that they have more questions about, they certainly would want to call our office to schedule either a telephone consult or an hour consult. We do a discovery meeting. And we are doing those online video by Zoom, or we're doing them in person or telephone. So it's convenient. There's really no excuse to get it done because we're making it really easy for everyone to get in touch with us. So yeah, there's lots of good stuff on there.
And then you guys have something that I have never heard of in any other estate planning firm. Talk to me for just a minute about the ePlan 365 that you offer.
So yeah, this is a great platform. It allows people to go in, and we can help them with this, but put in their information, upload their financial powers of attorney, medical powers of attorney, all of their documents, and give only people that they want to have access. So they can appoint what's called deputies that would have, access to what they're appointed to. So if you're in the hospital, obviously people don't carry around a folder of all of their financial and legal documents or their estate planning documents. So their deputies could get access to those online right away. And it also has some really cool features. You can upload, any, letters to family members. You can upload recipes, great grandma's recipe, so that it passes on to the family. You can upload pictures, really anything, anything that you want to pass to your family, you can put into this platform, and it's all, kind of in one place to pass on, and for the family to have access to. So it's really great. Yeah. And it's easy, you can just, get it right through your phone, type it in and have the password, and you have access to all that information.
And I know it's a secure platform. It complies with HIPAA. It's very, very secure. Erica, maybe you want to touch on what that looks like when you have a sudden tragedy, car accident, whatever. Talk about the importance of that in those situations too.
Sure. So I've experienced it. I've walked clients through it. So if you don't have your documents on hand, the doctors have their Hippocratic oath. So they're going to do whatever it is that they're supposed to do. If there's a family member on site, they will talk to next of kin. If that's not who you want your doctors to talk to, then there's a problem. I've used a healthcare power of attorney to move my parents from different facilities when they were in the wrong facility. It's very, very powerful to have it on hand, because if you don't have it on hand, you have no proof.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where if it's right here, you can say, here's the medications they're on. Isn't that not indicator? They're not supposed to be on that. Here's when they're supposed to take their medications. Here's, their wishes. They don't want to have a feeding tube, or they do want to have a feeding tube. Their regular doctors are here, here, and here. Here's their contact information. So it's, especially when you're extremely upset and stressed, you need to have something that's a little bit centering. And this is that, because you don't want to be digging through your mom's or your dad's documents, or trying to find something online or calling an attorney's office, which I have done, to get documents in a crisis, because at that point you're emotional and you're not thinking clearly. This is easy.
Yeah. I love that. And I think it's really innovative that you guys offer that to your estate planning clients. All right. Well, good conversations. Obviously, if folks have questions or they just want to get more information, they can schedule a consultation through the website. And Tara, as you mentioned, you're doing everything. You're in person, your Zoom, your phone calls, you're accessible, as they say. So, all right, ladies. Well, thank you so much for giving us all that information today. I know it's a lot to cover, but you guys certainly have a wealth of knowledge. So we'll wrap it up, and we'll suggest that folks call you if they have more questions. Thanks for joining us.
This has been great. Thank you.
Thanks.